Today's Tuesday, March 21st.
We've had some complaints recently that the news we report is bad and we should feel bad. I'm not sure how we create good news in the tech world. We really did look this week and there's nothing all that fun. We tried to put the fun stuff toward the end. So you got to stay and watch. But if you don't like the bad news, this is your safe space warning.
Safe space warnings. What has this channel become?
This is, from here on out, it's a free speech zone.
It's not. I mean, we do it because we want you to be aware. And actually, it's not really all that terrible. But you should definitely be aware. Well, yeah, some of it. No, never mind. I mean, the CIA stuff, good Lord.
I think it's like not terrible because of the boiling frog scenario.
Like, we're already done. Oh, the show's already off the rails. What are we going to start with? What was that? Oh, okay.
Krista.
How's it going? Yep. That's fine. Cookies. Well, we'll hurry and finish. Should be good. So we've got cookies to look forward to. We're going to end the, we're going to get through the news ASAP.
Let's rush through this.
Fastest news ever. Well, starting with a follow-up from last week, we mentioned that the Berkeley lectures had been taken offline. They're back online now, but not from Berkeley, so that Berkeley is shielded legally.
There's a group called Libry, I think. Is that how you pronounce that? LBRY?
There's no vowels. I don't know what you want me to do with that.
And they're, I think they're a nonprofit group, but they've gone to the trouble of getting all those videos and mirroring them. So Berkeley's not going to complain. They didn't want to take them down, but this sort of sidesteps. It's still a ridiculous legal situation. It's disgusting, but it's fixed in a way that still leaves the door open for this to be abused in the future.
So big thanks to the group named after an undigested piece of meat.
Liberty.
And also this week, technology news. Look, the one kind of big piece of technology news, AMD announced the Ryzen 5 processors, which will actually be available April 11th. And they range in price from $169 to $249.
Aside from the price, not super exciting. They basically just chopped off cores.
Now, the Ryzen 5 1600X is a 6-core 3+3 version, I guess, of the 1800X. So the 1800X, 4 gigahertz dual turbo to 4.1, can overclock and that sort of thing. That one might actually be kind of compelling for gaming, for games that don't really scale well to a lot of cores. It's not going to be faster than an 1800X, but it is going to be $250 instead of $500. So that might be a better choice if you really you want every frame that you can get. You've got $100 savings over the Intel 7700K. That's certainly better than the i5 part, at least on paper. Needs testing and all this other kind of stuff. But, honestly, I'm kind of excited about the Ryzen 5s because I think the 1600X, the 6-core, really hits a sweet spot with regard to gaming and people that are like, well, I'm not really going to use 8 cores. But 4 cores in 2017, it's really hard to recommend 4 cores in 2017.
It's if you're looking at the is it PlayStation Pro, the new one, like the souped up one, and the Scorpio Xbox, that makes a really compelling argument to build a PC instead because it's really cheap.
Yeah, the 720p of my Nintendo Switch. No, I didn't get a Nintendo Switch. I can't condone Nintendo's behavior. Although I might play it if somebody gave me one, because Zelda looks really cool, but must resist. It's fine. Police have gotten a surprising search warrant, if you didn't see this in the news.
A terrifying search warrant.
All right, so the deal with this is that there was this guy that was a credit union account holder, and he had like $28,000 stolen, $28,500 or something like that, stolen from his account. And a doctored photo of a passport was sent to them as part of the transaction. Well, if you do a Google image search for that person's name, you get a person that kind of sort of looks similar to the person in question, but is not actually the person in question. And so the doctored photo for the passport, in order to enable this financial transaction, came from a Google image search. And so a judge signed off on a warrant to Google to say, hey, anybody that searched for this guy's name, Google image search, whatever, We want to know the IP address names, what other associated Google account information. So if they're signed into Google, that sort of thing. We want to know everybody that searched for this person's name, in this time period that the police have narrowed it down to. So that's sort of interesting.
I think they put the whole package together from Google searches. Like they were able to get social security number and address and basically every piece of identification that would be required for this kind of large transaction. They were able to Google their way into getting it for this guy. So that's terrifying. But what's more terrifying is the idea that this could set a legal precedent and your records could be searched with any kind of crime that goes down. It's like, hey, if you Google something, that could be a reason for Google to have to hand over all of your information. And they don't just want like IP addresses. They want the Google account information. Everything Google knows about anybody that searched for this name or permutations of it, they want that.
Yeah. I mean, pretty soon those kind of okay. But then pretty soon those kind of search requests get really out of hand, and Google's employing a zillion people for all the local municipalities to do, these kinds of searches. And then all of a sudden, the other thing that I've seen that kind of looks like this is the YouTube copyright takedown thing, where it's just like, okay, you're a record label, or okay, you're a studio. Let's just give you a dashboard where you can just take down stuff at will and with impunity. And that won't be abused at all, except, oh, wait, it has been horribly abused.
Yeah, it's very chilling. It makes you think before you search for something on the internet, which I hope nothing bad happens to Emma Watson in the near future.
Oh, yeah, that happened. I didn't know about that, but then you were telling me, so.
A lot of searches for her is what I'm trying to say.
Oh, we're off the rails.
Well, more bad news. Gird your loins. The New York State Assembly has introduced a bill. Now, of course, this is not even close to becoming a law, but this is an introduction for an American version of right to forget. So the idea here is that if there is a story about you on the internet, you can go through a legal process. And that's very vague terms. It's like, well, if it's been long enough that this isn't in the news anymore, what does that mean? Then you will be required as a content creator or site host or whatever to take that down, or you will face horrible legal fines.
As a citizen, that sounds like not completely terrible. But then thinking about all the ways that politicians would abuse this, it's like, maybe I can live with the not quite, terrible version for myself.
And the language is stuff like inaccurate. Okay, that makes sense. Irrelevant. Well, who decides? Excessive or inadequate? Again, those are so subjective that a good lawyer could argue all day long that any news story is, three of those things. So the sad thing about this is most of the time this is used by politicians, people with power, rich people, CEOs who have the legal means to abuse the system to get their bad behavior erased to memory hole their mistakes.
It's definitely all about memory holes. If there was some version of this that is like, even just a line in here that's like, now, if you're a public figure, this doesn't really apply to you. This is only for, private citizens, not anybody operating in the public sector or anything to do with public whatever. Maybe there would be in an ideal utopia, there would be a version of this that would be good for the citizenry. But the motivations and the people doing this, I question their motives.
I would say it's the exact opposite. I would say you're the lower you are on the social scale, the more impossible it would become to ever use this.
Yeah.
If this goes into effect, what we should do as an experiment is kickstart some money and just get some gutter trash meth arrest and try to get rid of it 6 months after the fact. See how far they can get.
As a social experiment, it's no, that's still relevant. Employers will really need to know about, the horrible meth situation with, Bob Smith or whatever. I guess that's. You live in or around Washington, D.C., our nation's capital. Something weird's been going on with the cellular networks.
It's actually pretty simple. It's kind of a dirty little secret about how easy it is to intercept cell signals simply by pretending to be a cell tower. And, law enforcement uses it at every level. But in DC, apparently, there's just an insane amount of it. They call it the Overwatch system. Krista would love it.
Well, there's some evidence apparently. Some other people in government have been concerned enough about this to write the Department of Homeland Security to say, hey, do you have enough resources to deal with this? Are you guys on top of this? What's going on? Because apparently there's some suggestion or evidence or something that points to foreign governments targeting things. I mean, why would foreign governments targeting an old Android cell phone that certain politicians won't let go of? Nah, that wouldn't happen. That's not a thing.
Well, it certainly couldn't be somebody pretending to be a foreign government because we don't have that technology, right? Oh, wait.
Uh-oh. The D.C. Circuit Court issues a dangerous decision on cybersecurity. Ethiopia is free to spy on Americans in their own homes. Now, what? This has got to be a clickbait headline, right? I mean, this is. There's no way. There's no way. Ethiopia has, what's going on here?
So this spawned from an Ethiopian who expatriated to America, and he's a big proponent of democracy in Ethiopia. And he uses, the web and the internet and stuff to advocate for that while living in America so the stormtroopers can't kill him. And it turns out Ethiopia they were just in every piece of computing that he had. They were watching everything. They were spying on him. So he tried to sue them, but the court ruled that you can't do that because it's a foreign entity. Now, I wonder, why would the American government not want to set the precedent that spying on foreign entities can create a lawsuit?
Now, the interesting thing with this is this guy is here not as a guest or anything like that. He is a U.S. citizen,
right?
Who was born in Ethiopia but has lived here for over 30 years. And the court's reasoning was that even though the spying was taking place on American soil in this guy's home in America, because it originated outside of the U.S., there was nothing that he could do. This seems like at least international incident territory. I mean, it's like this is not acceptable. And it's like, well, we were just doing some stuff, but I could see how, is Ethiopia one of the Five Eyes countries or something? I mean, why would this be tolerable?
Well, this harkens back to that 9/11 Saudi Arabia debate, where one of the big bullet points was, we can't allow this because what we do in a lot of countries could be construed as terrorism, and we don't want to get sued.
Yeah, there is a lot of well, there's also a lot of computer security news this week too, not just politicians and lawmakers behaving badly.
Yeah, but spoiler alert, it's bad.
It's really bad. Did you guys hear about this? Because if you didn't hear about this, you're not subscribed to the right news feeds. There's an event called Pwn to Own, I guess that's how you pronounce that, where security researchers and people like that show off stuff that they've been working on, and you can earn money from companies. And so like Microsoft is like, hey, find a problem in the Edge browser, a security problem in the Edge browser, and we will pay you money because that's actually cheaper than paying hundreds of thousands of dollars is cheaper than employing security researchers full time that may not find anything. So it's sort of a contest of sorts, kind of abusive to that industry. But if you're good at that sort of thing, you can make a lot of money. And so sort of the doomsday scenario of exploits was found. So this situation is sort of hard to explain. So VMware is a virtualization product. So like, let's say that I'm a big service provider. I've got a big server and I'm going to divvy that up into multiple different customers, but I don't want customers to be able to get at each other's information. So think like Amazon, although Amazon doesn't use VMware, but just roll with me here. There is an exploit that you can run in Edge on a web page, basically, to break out of Edge, and then you're in Windows. And if you're in a virtual machine in Windows by VMware, you can get system-level privileges on Windows, and then you can use the system-level privileges on Windows to manipulate the virtual machine host. At that point, when you have control of the virtual machine host, you have access to all customer data across all virtual machines in that entire instance, which is, that's like the level of like you're at bare metal at that point. You can do whatever you want. It is completely nuts. That's like the Matrix level of access to the system. I can't think of a way to explain it that would really correctly explain how terrible of a situation that is.
And you as the end user, there's no amount of updating and safeguarding that will protect you from this because you're as secure as the least secure instance
Yeah.
in that virtualization. So if one person hasn't upgraded their Edge browser to fix this, whenever they fix it, then the system is completely at risk.
Yeah. So imagine a scenario where there's 50 customers on this virtualization service, and you've got your own virtual machine, and you're all patched up, and I guess you're running Windows virtually for whatever reason. It could happen. And you're all patched up and it's good. But if there's one guy on that machine that is not fully patched up and ready to go, the entire machine, every customer on that machine could be compromised. That's really bad. So you could fix VMware, and VMware immediately is going to have a fix or already has a fix for this to fix that. But honestly, this is exactly like we put the security stories first and the government's behaving badly stories first, because I think the article said that the total payouts for this and other exploits at this event was like $900,000. Let's just round up and say $1 million. The team that came up with that chain of exploits, if they had approached the CIA or a foreign government and said, "We got this, here's a demo, we want $5 million," that they would have been crazy to turn them down. Absolutely nuts. And this is like from the CIA leaks last week. This is the kind of thing that is a doomsday scenario in terms of like being able to take over and take a huge amount of stuff offline. Amazon had that outage last week. And so it's like, half the websites on the internet use Amazon in some form or another, whether it's font delivery or JavaScript caching or CDN or something. So imagine, a foreign power having access to this type of a software exploit and deploying it against all of Amazon's infrastructure. Amazon is not going to recover from that quickly, no matter what they do. And this is something that you should be cognizant of as someone who is interested in technology news. There's not a lot you can do about it. You shouldn't feel bad about it, but you should be aware of it because this is coming. This kind of thing, especially if our intelligence organizations are more interested in owning and controlling these kind of exploits. I would argue, I'm getting off on a tangent here, but I would argue that the, like the NIST here in America and other entities like that in other countries historically were interested in paying for and doing this kind of research to make everybody more secure, because somebody that had Brain One in the 80s and 90s said, hey, if we hoard these kind of exploits, it's going to be real bad real fast in exactly this kind of scenario. So instead, why don't we harden all these systems and help everybody understand and help everybody with encryption and do that kind of stuff? And at some point, idiots co-opted these organizations to manipulate them into recommending weak encryption or encryption that was backdoored, like the elliptic curve thing that the NIST got all caught up in. Like who authorized that? They were an idiot. That was just completely unacceptable.
Well, the next story kind of pales in comparison. Looking back, we probably should have done this one first. But there is a user access control bypass for Windows 10. It doesn't affect the earlier versions, where anybody who can edit the registry can use the restore controls to elevate their privileges in Windows.
Well, I like this story because this is not intentional idiocy, like, co-opting the elliptic curve encryption thing and the VMware and all those exploits. That was not intentional idiocy, but the CIA sort of collecting these kinds of exploits is intentional idiocy. This is just, casual oopsie. This is really funny because, the Windows backup utility, in order to do its thing, needs system access, and so that's fine. And so how does Windows know where the system backup utility is? It's a registry key, but a regular user can change what program that points at. So it's like, I want an administrative command prompt to be my backup utility. Windows is like, okay, there you go. This is just an oversight. This is probably not intentional.
There's a pretty rich history of bypassing Windows security with things like, the translator and the accessibility tools and stuff like that. Yeah.
I don't even need to log into the system. I can just request help. It's like, help. Okay, help. What do you need help? How do I open a command prompt? Just click here. Okay, cool. And then you can get a command prompt or run Explorer or whatever, even before you log in. It's not quite that easy anymore. The FBI has their iPhone tool that is kind of like that, and they don't want to talk about it because it might still be useful.
This was the San Bernardino tool. They didn't come up with it. They paid a third party to come up with it and sell it to them. But now that, how long ago was that? Was that like 6 months ago?
It's been a long time.
Freedom of information requests are coming out saying, how did you do this? And the FBI is saying, no, we can't tell you because we want to use this again. Might still be useful.
It's classified. Knowing that information's above your pay grade, citizen.
Yeah.
Oh. Speaking of the FBI behaving badly, well, no, maybe not really. I don't know. The FBI has been busy. The FBI has been up to stuff. So there was this story about the journalist who has epilepsy, and epileptic seizures may be caused by intense flashing lights or things like that. Well, this journalist wrote something, and it angered some people, and so they sent him images that were bright flashing lights, I guess with the intent of causing an epileptic seizure.
Well, yeah, the text of the tweet was, "You deserve a seizure." So
okay.
I think that's pretty
clear on the terms of the intent.
So the FBI has arrested this person, and so I guess it means that by sending a digital image with intent, I guess. I'm sure there's nothing on the law books but you can be arrested. This guy worked at Vanity Fair, but it wasn't just one person. After it hit, and the wife tweeted, she was like, "I hope you're happy. He's now having a seizure." 40 more people sent the same kinds of images.
Wow.
This guy's not well liked on Twitter.
I guess it is all about intent, but this sets a really sort of dangerous precedent, maybe.
Yeah. Well, we talked earlier about being triggered in safe spaces. I wonder how far we are here from people arguing that any kind of speech invaded their happiness bubble and caused them enough distress to have a physical reaction to it. It's not quite the same thing, but it's a slippery slope, I think.
I had a stress reaction and broke out in hives. It's like, is that actionable legally?
Or cut myself or whatever. But now, if you do suffer from epilepsy, you got to wonder, is Twitter the place for you? I mean, that's a realistic concern on any given day looking at Twitter.
I wonder if the built-in operating system accessibility, Windows and Mac OS, even Linux, have really good accessibility features built into it. I wonder if the accessibility features were turned on at the time, and if the accessibility features of the operating system would prevent rapidly moving images. And so that would sort of stop that from happening in the first place.
I was talking to somebody else about this, and we wanted the same thing. And if not, let's write a program that throttles the frame rate when it detects rapidly changing images. We'll get that thing on every government computer, every school computer. We'll retire. That'll be it.
We can do like that guy was doing in the earlier story where they were suing to get the videos offline at Berkeley.
Yeah.
It's like, oh, this is a public computer, a government computer without.
Yeah, exactly. If you don't have our software, you're putting lives at risk.
Our software limits your machine to 5 FPS. That is the absolute maximum mandate by law, because this could,
Oh, we could also sell that as keeping kids on track at school so they don't watch YouTube or play games and stuff like that.
Somebody patent that. Oh, software patents aren't really a thing anymore. Never mind.
Also, become the most hated person in the history of American high schools.
Well, Windows. So Ryzen, this is kind of related, but with Ryzen and Kaby Lake, now Windows Update is blocked. So if you're running Windows 7 or Windows 8 on the sort of the newer hardware, Microsoft has followed up on its promise to block those platforms.
Now, when they announced Ryzen, there was a lot of controversy about this. It only running on Windows 10, but I guess they were late getting it implemented. We've seen Ryzen operate on these older operating systems.
Mm-hmm. So
I don't think this is done to prevent things not working properly. I think this is just, we're desperate to get Windows 10 users. so desperate.
And Windows 7 is actually faster for like some of the gaming benchmarks. And it's like, oh, I must have my FPS. For whatever reason, just the architecture of Windows 7 is a little bit faster. Even AMD looked at that and they're like, well, we don't think Windows 10 is doing anything wrong as far as scheduling and how it's handling the Ryzen processor. We just think it's architectural differences between Windows 7, probably designed for older hardware, and Windows 10, probably not really taking into account, older hardware as much. Because in a lot of respects, the Ryzen on-die architecture is very similar to like the Core 2 Quad CPU when it came out, in that the Core 2 Quad was sort of 2 dual-core CPUs, except Ryzen is 2 4-core CPUs on a single piece of silicon. So it's sort of similar-ish. But I think that maybe Microsoft's got the numbers on this. And I was like, oh crap, we're seeing a lot of Ryzen machines on Windows 7 because people are building gaming rigs or whatever. It's like, oh, we got to shut that down before that turns into a thing.
And what it does is stops updates. So if you hate Windows updates, maybe build a Steam cache server, block it from the internet, and just have a beautiful offline Windows 7 gaming PC.
Just hang on to Windows 7 just a little bit longer until Wine or other stuff can actually run everything.
Day-to-day on Linux, and then just have that one locked down Windows machine to play games on.
Well, it is possible to get Doom for Windows to work with Wine under Linux with the Vulkan graphics API, which is mind-blowing, but it's a little fiddly. But, so it's like, I don't know. Microsoft with the ads and all this other stuff, they've got to, this has got to be terrible stumbling blocks for them. It really does. I guess from a security standpoint, though, they don't really, Windows 7 is like, a 10-year-old operating system at this point. So I kind of get it if they don't want to update that from a security standpoint anymore, but it's still kind of terrible. Well, it's been a long time since we've heard anything about Google Glass holes and all that. Did Google give up on the whole Google Glass thing, or is it still alive and well?
Well, I don't think they anticipated how much hate they would generate for the people that bought the Google Glass. The world is just not accepting of those people. And so it makes sense that they've found a more utilitarian use for those things.
It's like, oh, Google Glass. Oh, you must be a pretentious asshole. This is actually sort of an interesting use of Google Glass. At this company, these are, I guess, assembly line workers and QA workers, and they're using Google Glass as sort of an information repository access system. So it's like they can scan a barcode on a part and see all of their internal technical documentation on that part, see videos of how to install it, installation requirements on all this other kind of stuff. And the company reported that, they've seen a 20% plus or minus increase in their quality assurance inspection speeds and that kind of thing from implementing Google Glass. And so this, I think, not just for Google Glass as a product, but this is something Microsoft was harping on with their HoloLens. It's like Microsoft is like VR, okay, whatever. Augmented reality is where we think it's at, is something that Microsoft people have said at their press events. And this is a very compelling story for, sort of the augmented reality story. Google Glass is not exactly augmented reality, but it is a lot of information, right at your fingertips that incorporates, Google Glass can see what you see. And so it's like, oh, there's a barcode. Google Glass can scan the barcode and pull it up. And it is perhaps easier than a phone or another small screen device. So this is a really interesting story if you're into that kind of thing, and you should check it out because, this company can't say enough good things about Google Glass. I found it kind of interesting.
And on a factory floor, everybody's wearing big gaudy glasses, so they can't judge you.
Yeah, nobody thinks you're a pretentious asshole. You're just another blue collar worker, just trying to get your stuff done, which is, that's completely fine.
So, did you know that the new Beauty and the Beast movie is in theaters?
Totally not sponsored to say that. Just like Google. Apparently, the Google ads in what's the how do you activate the Google Assistant? Okay, Google, order me some tickets for Beauty and the Beast. Does it work like Alexa?
I think it probably does. Now, Google insists that they were not paid to make the launch of Beauty and the Beast part of the daily updates for all of its Google users. But they didn't mention any of the other movies that were coming out that day.
Based on this vast database of information that we have about you, we think you'll be interested in Beauty and the Beast. It's like, Google, you got to work on your algorithms. Come on.
So a lot of people are upset about it, but they are adamant. This was not an ad. It was just added value for its users, and you need to get over it.
This is not an ad, but you will go see Beauty and the Beast by Disney.
Next week, they'll have a little quiz like, what happened 30 minutes in Beauty and the Beast? If you want to continue using Google, please answer.
You can get a $5 Google Play gift card. And it's like, I don't really care about this Google. And it's like, fine, try searching for anything for the next week. It's like, Google?
It relates all your searches somehow to Beauty and the Beast.
Somebody should make a webcomic about that, like Vindictive Google, like the Vindictive Google of the future. And it's like, hey, Google, I want to search for this thing. And it's like, no, you haven't watched this ad. Or, it's been a long time since I've heard from you. And it's like, can I get a history, like a family medical history or something? And it's like Google's like, wow, are you just filling in the gaps in the database that you have on me? And the Google Assistant's like, yeah, basically. If you want me to work with you, you got to work with me. We get some science news. Now, this one's a fun one. So physicists are sort of faced with at least the mathematical possibility that time gets more fuzzy around very, very precise clocks.
Yeah, that's. We talked about quantum tunneling a little last week. This is more quantum mechanics with some relativity mixed in, and it's kind of hard to get your head around. But it has to do with, and we're not talking about like even atomic time isn't super affected by this. It has to do with insanely precise timekeeping. Splitting it down into time measurements that I don't even know the name of, and the energy required to do that.
It's basically exactly like you would expect if the whole universe was a simulation. It's like, I'm not really looking at, the moon, therefore the moon is not there, because why render the moon? I mean, it's completely fine. You can, have its effects and gravitation and things like that. That'll be taken into account in the simulation. So time is apparently like that. And if you treat time in this way, you can reconcile some of the irreconcilable stuff between quantum mechanics and relativity, which is, they've been relativity and quantum mechanics are not really compatible with each other, and they operate at sort of different scales. But these people have sort of come up with this mathematical thing that is a consequence of making the two reconcile with one another. That is to do with how precise time is, and one fix for that is like, well, if it's going to be this precise in this area, the time around that can sort of be a little bit more fuzzy. It's a really interesting read.
The amount that it's going to affect you in your daily life, zero. Absolutely zero.
Absolutely zero.
But as we get into quantum computing and we need to break things down into these tiny, tiny increments of time, it could become more and more a part of things.
Yeah, I mean, think about like the clock speed. This isn't really exactly true, but think about the clock speed of like your Kaby Lake 5 gigahertz processor. How long can light move through a vacuum in one clock tick? So like say that you could do a 32-bit ad or whatever in one clock tick on a 7700K running at 5 gigahertz. Light is going to move something like an inch or a centimeter through a vacuum. It's nuts when you think about that. It's like 1/5 billionth of a second light can move something about like that far. That's just crazy. That's completely nuts when you start to think about it in terms of those kinds of scales.
And these measurements are way more accurate than that.
Yes, much, much smaller. So Samsung, they're leaking customer information from their TVs.
Yeah, so a guy ordered a TV directly from Samsung, and they sent him a tracking number. Well, the problem with the tracking number is that if your name matches a customer with the same name from before, it's going to show you their information. And not just like, the tracking number, but address, how much you paid, what you bought. I think there was even more information. There was an insane amount of information that was stored online with just a tracking number that was married to a name that was not unique if two people had the same name.
Well, this is clearly somebody that we should trust with all the information that a smart TV would generate with a microphone that's always on and monitoring what you're doing and listening for transmissions, listening for, whatever you might be doing, building this massive, massive database. Clearly, here's a company that has their stuff together in terms of keeping that information private and treating it the way that it should be treated.
So maybe order a Samsung TV, get it shipped to John Smith, harvest some data.
Speaking of companies that have failed to live up to reasonable expectations, New York City is suing Verizon. Now, this is a follow-up from an earlier story, but New York City is following through because Verizon has apparently doubled down on the, oh yeah, come at me, bro.
Well, so it was Comcast, and then it was Time Warner, and now Verizon. New York is intent on suing all of the ISPs, and God bless them. In this case, back in 2008, Verizon promised that Fios would be in how many homes? Like 1,000 homes or 90%, I think. 90%, yeah. Way more than 1,000. And they have failed to do that. But they're arguing that because some landlords will not let them run through a building, that they should not be required to live up to their promise.
Well, in that's not really valid because Verizon themselves, at least based on earlier reports that I'd read, to the best of my recollection, Verizon has entered into agreements with landlords where it's like, hey, we're going to be the ISP for this building, but also you're not allowed to have anybody else wire in this building. And so landlords might be in an impossible situation where the ISP that has wired their building, as a condition of providing their residents internet access, they had to sign an agreement that said, oh, nobody else can have access, even just right-of-way access to the building. And so New York law, I think, has solved that problem. But, contract law is a whole other critter. So it's kind of a mess.
Even so, if you're a landlord, you don't have to agree to things. And for them to make a promise that they couldn't possibly live up to without these agreements, was pretty irresponsible.
And ISPs, at least the large national ISPs here in America, seem to be pretty happy with the way that things are going with the FCC, because they're now saying, well, that web browsing and app usage history, that's not even really sensitive. That shouldn't even be private in the first place.
What an argument. So despite all of the backtracking that's happened now that Ajit Pai is chair of the FCC, there's still a possibility that the opt-in requirement of the selling your usage history will go into effect. I think it's in December. But the lobby is working overtime. And this is one of their arguments, is that, no, your browsing history is not sensitive data. Now, we would never sell sensitive data, but everywhere that you've gone on the web, that's not sensitive.
Now, I know that some of you in the audience work for these ISPs, and I would never tell you to do this, but if you know somebody, you might want to upload, some Congress critters' browsing history to Pastebin or something, and then alert, some people to that really happened. Now, I'm not saying you should do that. That's wrong. But I can't help but think, every time I see something like this, I always think about the VHS. We have a federal law in America that your VHS rental history is protected under the law. Like there's privacy laws for protecting what videotapes you rented. And the reason for that is because some journalists got a hold of some politician's VHS rental history and published it. And of course it was like porno and all kinds of like crazy stuff. And, I guess you can, not that there's anything wrong with porno, but you can, there's a wide spectrum there, I think. And so the people might be embarrassed by some of the things that they're into with that, I guess. But so that, and as a result of that, we have a federal law that is like, no, that information is protected. I feel like that you can really get to know somebody a lot better from their internet browsing history than from their VHS rental records. So clearly something is wrong here.
I bet there'll be a provision where it's like lawmakers' browsing history is national security and can't be, they have to have exceptions.
Once again, it's like, this is not for you, ordinary citizens. Why is this? Why are people unreasonable? This show should be the people not behaving reasonably show. And that's just the whole premise of the show, is like, here's an example of people not behaving reasonably. We as citizenry need to organize and be like, you really should behave reasonably. And that's all we ask. Like, we're not asking for anything much here other than just please behave reasonably. That's it. That's all I want.
Well, this next story is certainly an example of what you just said. So Pakistan is, this says once, they're basically demanding that Facebook and Twitter help them track down people who are violating their blasphemy laws. Now, the blasphemy laws in Pakistan are pretty crazy. You can be locked up for life, and I think there might even be a death sentence if it's bad enough. So they're asking essentially for Facebook and Twitter to help them put people to death.
Crazy. We're talking old man Nelson crazy, with the one eye and like the really puffy eyebrow and, the crazy hair. That level of crazy is what we're talking about.
Now, I think I saw a follow-up to that Facebook had actually dispatched somebody to like go over there and negotiate. So their answer wasn't, you're crazy, no. It was, let's talk about this.
How can we continue to do business with you? What do we need to get to?
Those are really populous places of the world, and Facebook wants those users. It does not want to have to report next quarter that it lost that many users because it wouldn't play ball.
Well, publicly we can't support you, but what if we just give you full access to the system where you can just, it's like, and then we're in the Ethiopia situation all over again where.
Or, like they got that new fake news button. Maybe they'll add a blasphemy button.
A blasphemy button that's only available in Pakistan.
Yeah.
What is the internet coming to? No, we must resist the balkanization of the internet. This is not good. Germany's at it too. Germany plans to fine social media sites over hate speech.
Now, that's a nebulous phrase there, hate speech. Of course, Germany already has laws about certain things. It's just things that you can't say in Germany. They don't have free speech. And you can be locked up, for example, Holocaust denial. And so they're looking to make social media sites responsible for not taking those kinds of things down. So if they claim that something is not allowed, it has to come down within a certain amount of time, or I think it's $50 million fine.
It would be, this kind of thing is so tricky to do on the internet, not because, I don't know if their heart's in the right place or not, or if there's a hidden agenda here, but if the internet were run this way, then the internet would only be filled with content that is that is consistent with the most conservative place on planet Earth. And that's not an internet that I want to be a part of.
Well, it's also going to be, you have such conflicting beliefs in what's acceptable and what isn't. You think about if the severe right wing in America was in charge of the internet versus the severe left wing in America being in charge of the internet. That would be two very different places. And most of the content in either case would completely violate this rule for the other side. So who gets to decide these things?
Would it be decided that me calling whoever decided it was a good idea to co-opt the elliptic curve encryption standard an idiot be classified as hate speech?
Yeah, absolutely. Any questioning of authority would be hate speech, I'm sure. Well, so good news. If you've had your head in the sand this whole time, yank it out, because from here on out, the news is a lot less bad.
Yay! Look at this. Raspberry Pi. There have been so many Raspberry Pis sold, it has finally beat the Commodore 64.
Commodore 64 was third behind PC and Mac, of course, and they held that title for a long time. But now Raspberry Pi is taking over.
Well, see, the thing that you guys don't understand about the Commodore 64 is that it was phenomenal for what it was, but it was also relatively low cost. But because it was relatively low cost, it got incorporated into a ton of other stuff. Industrial systems for calibrating things, systems for measuring things. There are auto mechanics, shade tree mechanics and things like that have calibration equipment that still runs from a Commodore 64. So you go in and there's just this oil encrusted, just black Commodore 64. And it's like, what the hell is that? It's like, oh, that's our brake caliper calibration machine. It's like, it's running on a Commodore 64. And they're like, yeah, we probably should get a new one, but it works fine. It's just, Commodore 64 sold an unbelievable number of units. And there's a lot of variations on the Commodore 64 as well. So it's incredibly long-lived because of its ubiquity, because of its relative affordability. And, those properties are really, sort of in common with the Raspberry Pi. The Raspberry Pi has always been $35. We're on third and a half generation Raspberry Pi at this point. So, it's a $35 computer and it's very capable for what it is.
And if you had your Commodore 64 and you just absolutely, you couldn't get monitors or things that would work with it anymore, it makes sense to move up to the Pi because it's cheap and you got another 30 years of life out of it.
I don't know how it would be. Anybody in the audience upgrading from a Commodore 64 to a Raspberry Pi? We want to hear from you.
That's funny, how much more computing power you would get, even though you're just running a $35 Raspberry Pi.
Yeah. Well, and for the industrial applications, for things like the Commodore 64 was used for, the Apple II got a lot of traction in that area too, because the Apple II's bus was pretty easy to interface. But the Raspberry Pi with its GPIO, except not being 5-volt tolerant, at least I don't think it's 5-volt tolerant, not really. The GPIO on the Raspberry Pi makes it really easy to do the same kinds of things people were doing with the Raspberry Pi in the 80s, or with the Commodore 64 in the 80s. So I think the Raspberry Pi is probably going to be around for a long, long time.
Well, we said the news was good. Now, there's a little bit of robot revolution news. So if you think that that's going to destroy your jobs and ruin the country, put your head back in the sand for this one. Because Lemonade is an insurance company that completely 100% uses AI and algorithms to decide whether or not to pay out on your insurance claims. And there is no universal insurance body, so they can't officially say this, but everybody's pretty sure that 3 seconds is the record for approving an insurance claim.
Yeah. So the situation is you've got an app on your phone, and something happens. You need to submit an insurance claim. And I think the example was some guy had a really expensive coat. It was like $1,000.
Yeah.
And the insurance, like, he submitted the claim, and then the software looked at it and looked at the parameters, and presumably the app has access to your data or some of your data and things like that. And it's like, all right, we want you to make a video describing the situation, where it happened and all this other kind of stuff. And the guy did, and then as soon as the software looked at that or ticked all the boxes or whatever, it said, okay, this is probably legit, and it approved the claim.
And wrote a check. And I think it was like a direct deposit type thing. So he had the money 3 seconds after making the claim.
Wow. So
this thing, they claim they have many, many levels of fraud detection, and they claim that it's so good and it's so accurate to look at all these various metrics and figure out if somebody's defrauding them that they can do. I mean, they're all not going to be 3 seconds, but they're going to be several orders of magnitude faster than a human trying to do this.
Neat. So I can't think of anybody that would probably defend the robot revolution in the insurance industry, especially if you've ever had to deal with a claims adjuster and haggling and arguing with things. And it's like, no, my policy totally covers this. And it's like, well, no, your roof blew off and that's covered under your policy. But then when it rained inside your house, that's not really covered by your policy. And it's like, what?
Yeah. And I can see it getting to the point of, like, with these apps, it's like, there are certain things in my home I want to insure and certain things I don't really care about. So, it's sort of like a la carte insurance, which could be very disruptive for the insurance industry.
How cool would it be if you could just go through your house and take pictures of your stuff, and it's like, here's my thing, here's my other thing,
Yeah.
This is the other thing. I want to insure all this stuff. Okay.
I'm sure that's coming if they're not already doing it.
Well, drones are a little bit of a problem because they're getting ubiquitous and everybody can use them, even the bad guys. So China has developed radio rifles that shoot radio waves at drones to take them down.
Now they claim, I don't know how much of this is just flowery press release, but they claim that by interrupting the radio signal, they actually, the drone's autopilot will take over and just land. So it's sort of a non-destructive way. And plus, it might help them track down whose drone it is so they can go and make them disappear. But these rifles have a 0.6 mile range, and they're planning to bring them out during like large celebrations and political things where they don't want any disruption or any bad things. Now, in some parts of the Middle East, they are actually using these drones as explosive devices. So it's not just like, you're not allowed to film this, or we don't want you disrupting this. There is a danger when it comes to drones.
Some of the drones are carrying improvised explosive devices and that sort of thing. Yep. But another way to make the drone disappear, other than the completely reasonable radio rifle thing, is a $3 million surface-to-air missile.
A Patriot. So someone was giving a speech, and I don't think it was ever revealed who this quote-unquote ally was. It was somebody we sell Patriots to. And
that list can't be that long, right?
They actually, I think it's $3.6 million. They pushed a button to spend $3.6 million to bring down a drone. I think the drone was $600.
Wow. Yeah. I mean, so I guess this was an example to the Army of, hey, we need to update our stuff. We need something to be able to do this. But I mean, couldn't like one of those old school fishing net guns like do the job here?
Well, I would think you would have, like drone versus drone kind of thing.
Oh, yeah.
If you had your own exploding drone.
You guys, the Army, you just need to go to CMU and get those students at CMU, because the CMU they have those like drones in formation and that kind of thing. Just go there, get a bunch of those students to put it together, the combat drones for that. That's going to be a thing. Hell, combat drone racing might be a thing. I saw a demo video where there was a drone racing around a stadium and avoiding columns and things like that. Those guys are the guys that you need working on the anti-drone drones.
But of course, you would get anti-drone countermeasures. It's going to be an arms race. It's going to be a fun one to watch.
We get a drone with a cloaking device. We'll have stealth drones. It's like, they didn't even know it was coming.
Okay, another kind of bad story, but it's, I would say, darkly hilarious, maybe. So we've talked about the robot revolution. You know, that it's taken over the insurance industry, it's taken over fast food, it's taken over the factory, and now first blood has been drawn in the war against the humans and the robots.
Yeah, this is this is a situation where the robots have gotten a taste for blood, and there's just no going back at this point.
This was actually a woman who was doing servicing the robots. She was their caretaker, and somehow this was a plant that made trailer hitches, and it was supposed to be like there should be no way that this robot would be in operation while she was taking care of it, but it came to life unexpectedly and mounted a trailer hitch onto her head, which crushed her skull. So they haven't given a good explanation as to why that robot came to life, why the safeguards didn't work. And now her husband is suing this plant.
Yeah, I have a feeling this isn't the last time that we've heard this story. And so it's probably going to be a question of, the emergency stop safety system was compromised or something like that. Artificial intelligence or, other things like that is probably not at work here, but possibly buggy software is at work. There's when X-ray machines were starting to be mass produced, really buggy X-ray machine software were responsible for giving people insane doses of X-ray radiation. And so maybe it's something like that where it's like, oh, yeah, there's just so many bugs in the software because it is so universally awful that, yeah, it actually can kill somebody. And this is just an example of how this industry is kind of a wild west. There's not, there are safety regulations and there are things like OSHA, but stuff like this is still going to happen.
And if you go through any kind of computer science education, that's one of the ethics things that they always talk about. It was like it wasn't the x-rays, but it was the cancer radiation treatment where it was like the decimal was off. And so it was just setting people on fire, basically. So who's responsible there? Is it the company? Is it the programmer? How does that work?
Project manager.
Yeah. So there's going to be a lot of that. If you're going to go into law, that's probably a good kind of law to get into as the robots become more and more common.
Well, our next story, it's two things that should never be mixed: the Internet of Things and adult toys. Those things should never go together.
I don't know who thought, like, what Internet of Things feedback do you want from this? So there was a lady's sex toy, a vibrator, very sleek looking one, very modern. And it's Internet of Things. So you put in your email, you sign up for an account, and it tracks your usage. Well,
apparently it tracks a lot more than that.
It's not supposed to necessarily track your usage. You're supposed to be able to do things with the software. But anyway, what they discovered was that it was tracking usage. And it wasn't even anonymous. It was tied to the email address. So the company that sold it knew when and for how long these were being used based on the email address.
And a lot more detail than that, apparently.
Yeah. So
there was a lawsuit.
This went to court. And they've settled. They were
surprising. Should we not have done that?
Surprisingly, they didn't want the publicity of a huge court battle over this. So they've settled. But for the love of God, some things in your life don't need to be Wi-Fi enabled. Don't buy them.
It's got Bluetooth. Buy it. Don't care what it is. Buy it. It's, no. I feel like a Luddite saying that, but no, the internet, Bluetooth does not belong on everything. Jesus. And if that doesn't do it for you, we have some footage of U.S. nuclear weapons testing, and it's on YouTube.
We were like really going out of our way. It's like, we need to end on a positive note. I mean, last week there was Flippy. Everybody loved Flippy, and so do we. But this week there was no such story. So maybe just watch some nuclear tests. It's oddly calming to watch these slow motion, up close nuclear explosions. It's kind of scary in a meta sense, but just forget about that and enjoy the calming sensation of watching nukes up close.
Yeah, try to forget that guy in North Korea has these.
Well, and all those people in Washington, which might be more dangerous.
And Pakistan, who, with the Facebook stuff.
You know what? Don't think about all this.
It is oddly calming. There's no sense of scale, really, is my only complaint, because you look at some of these things, And these are recently declassified. So these are tests, I think, from the Los Alamos testing and that sort of thing. And it really is fascinating. It really is. It is. It's easy to be awestruck by this content, and so you should check it out. And that's pretty much it for the news. We're out. We should have a fair bit of content this week too. So hopefully we've got quite a few videos in the pipeline, so that'll be a lot of fun. So you'll find us on the forums. I'm Wendell.
I'm Ryan.
We'll see you there.